All right, here we are on a Wednesday night for the Panther-Lair Show. Chris Peak from Panther-Lair.com. Glad to be hanging out here, as we always do, 8:30 p.m. on Wednesday night. YouTube.com/Panther-Lair.com is the YouTube address. That's where we go live every Wednesday night for the Panther-Lair Show. It's our own version of a talk show. You know, it's not a call-in. You're not getting on the phone and getting on the air or the radio or anything like that. But you are commenting and interacting. You can post your comments, your questions right there in the chat screen, and we'll get to it and have kind of a conversation, a little back and forth. I sometimes ramble on for a little bit, kind of say whatever I want to say for a little while, but then we always get to as many of the comments and questions as we can. And that's what's kind of fun about it. Like I say, it's almost like a bit of a talk show, kind of a talk show format that we do here on YouTube every Wednesday night. And it's a lot of fun. We've been doing this for a few years. I've been really enjoying it, and I think you guys have too. I hope you have too. We get a regular crowd that jumps in and always seems to join. We do the post-game shows. Those are always fun as well. But this Wednesday night show, this is the basis of it all. This is what we come back to every week, and everything kind of leads up to this and, follows after it. Of course, you should make sure you're subscribed to our YouTube channel, youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com. If you're watching the video later, I don't know if it shows up during the live stream, but there should be a little subscribe button right there. You could like this video, subscribe to the YouTube channel, and then you get a notification anytime we go live. If it's Wednesday night, if it's post-game, if it's an emergency situation where, some big news happens and we've got to go live and talk about it, if you subscribe to our YouTube channel, you're going to get a notification when we go live, so you'll know anytime. You'll never miss a live stream. So make sure you do that. Like the video and subscribe to the YouTube channel. And then, of course, the big one, the website, Panther-Lair.com, Panther-Lair.com. You see it right there at the bottom. That's the most comprehensive source of Pitt sports news on the internet, football, basketball, and recruiting. Find it all at Panther-Lair.com, and, of course, message boards where you can interact with hundreds and thousands of your closest Pitt fan friends. We have this conversation every Wednesday night. We sit down, you guys post comments and questions. I talk for a while. It's fun back and forth for an hour. We'll take that and multiply it, times 24 for every other day in the week, because that's what's happening at Panther-Lair.com on the message boards, where it's all day, every day. Literally, in the middle of the night, there are new messages being posted, new threads being started, and new conversations going on. So you definitely got to check that out if you're a Pitt fan. I don't think there's a better place for Pitt fans to gather on the internet than Panther-Lair.com. So hopefully, if you're not a member yet, if you haven't checked it out yet, hopefully you do. Hopefully you took advantage of that special offer we had last week, where you were able to get a whole bunch of stuff, like the entire month of August, for free. If you missed out on that deal, shame on you. But it's worth like the $8 or $9 it costs to subscribe for a month. So here we are, second week of training camp. Coming up on the halfway point. They've got full week of camp this week, full week of camp next week. And then the week after that, it's a few days, and then they have the kickoff luncheon on Friday, and then you're into the game week. It's going to be a long time. Today's only Wednesday. We still have to get through this week. And next week's going to be, a full week, a long week. And then even then, you're still 2 weeks away, but it's getting here. It's coming. It's showing up. Sort of slowly but surely, that season opener against West Virginia is approaching. And I think Pitt fans are going through waves of emotions. There are times when they're super confident it's going to be a 52-7 blowout. There are times when they start, I think, to get a little bit nervous. Mostly just sort of right down the middle is where I tend to stay, and where I think a lot of Pitt fans are. My thought, like I said, on this West Virginia game, I've said it for a while, and I'll probably say it again before we get to the end of August. I really kind of think this first game is going to be probably kind of sloppy. It's the first game of the season. Those tend to have their warts. You know what I mean? There tend to be hiccups in that kind of environment. But, with Pitt, with the new offense, new quarterback, West Virginia with a new quarterback, lots of personnel turnover for the Mountaineers, some key positions turned over for Pitt. It's going to be... I think it's going to be a bit of a sloppy game, probably a low-scoring game. I fully expect Pitt to win. I don't really think that... I don't think it's going to be some super crisp, high-scoring affair. I mean, I could see something like a 30-13 type of game that's not necessarily all that aesthetically pleasing, but it comes out as a W. I'm fairly confident Pitt is going to win. I just don't know if it's going to be the kind of game where you say, man, they look amazing. I think it's going to take a little time for them. Now, they're going to have to be there for week 2, but I've said this before on the show. I mean, you guys have heard me say this a bunch of times, so I don't need to. I'll probably reiterate it probably once a week, just to keep our goals or our expectations in focus. But that's sort of what I see out of that one. Between now and then, there's plenty for this team to do. I think they're still working on installing the offense. I think they're still working on refining and developing the defense. I think, we've heard the coaches talk before about operating on sort of a graduate level with some of the guys they have. I think Dave Borbley has talked about sort of graduate level courses with his offensive linemen when you have all these 6th-year seniors and 5th-year seniors. Charlie Partridge has talked about graduate level work with his defensive linemen with all the upperclassmen and experienced players coming back. And so I think when you have a situation like that, when you have that level of experience and veteran players and proven players like they have, particularly on the defensive line, a little bit in the secondary, and then obviously Servassier Dennis at middle linebacker, you have an opportunity to really play at an advanced level. You know what I mean? You've got your basic defense, you've got all your rules and your checks and your calls and things like that, but I think you can really put more on their plate to have higher expectations for not just how they're going to play in the moment, but how they're going to react and respond, what they're going to see, how they're going to, just how they're going to carry themselves. I mean, guys like Haba Baldonado and John Morgan and Deslin Alexander and Servassier Dennis and Eric Hallett and Brandon Hill should be playing, and Marquez Williams should be playing like pros right now. They should have a pro mentality in their approach to the game, pro mentality in their approach to preparation, and a pro mentality in how they play on the field. They should know what the other team is doing. There shouldn't be too many times where they're caught by surprise. Their film study, their preparation, their understanding of the game should be a strength, and to their advantage. And you see it filter down a little bit. We had an interesting conversation with Deion Hayes today, junior defensive end from Westinghouse, who I think is on the verge of a huge season this year. I think he's going to have a really breakout year this year. And we talked to him about some different things, about how his approach is this year and how he's grown and developed and all this kind of thing. And he said, it was interesting, he said he went through and watched all of Pitt's games from last season. Like in the lead up to training camp, he watched all of Pitt's games last season, specifically focusing on 87, 5, and 6. Haba Baldonado, Deslin Alexander, and John Morgan. Watching those guys very closely for what they did and how they worked on the field. And I thought that was interesting. I don't think that was an assignment from Charlie Partridge. I think that was something Deion Hayes came up with on his own. And that's you sort of assign these things in retrospect when you find out if a guy actually has a great season. But that's the kind of thing that I think you can point to later as a turning point to, in a young player's career. I think you can point to that and say, that was where he really grew up. That was where he really matured. He took a big step forward there, not just in his physical ability, because Deion Hayes has been a very good player for a long time, going back to Westinghouse. But go watch what he did at Westinghouse. He was just rushing off the edge, just getting into the backfield, You can't do that in college. You need to have a better understanding of the game. You need to have better technique and a better approach to the game. And maybe this offseason was the point where Deion Hayes really got it and was able to really put it and maybe came to fully understand the level of work you have to put in to play at a really high level. That it's not just good enough to be a really talented athlete. That you need to work just as hard off the field as you do on the field. And maybe this is that point when Deion Hayes got it. And that's not to say that, boy, it took him so long or why didn't he get it before or anything like that. I think it's more a matter of just a young player growing up, which that happens. Young guys grow up, and this may be, maybe we're going to see that with Deion Hayes. Now we know you're going to have to see it with Bengali Kamara, with Solomon DeShields. They're not young guys, but Shane Simon and Tyler Wiltz are going to have to take a step forward and be ready to contribute to those outside linebacker spots. But I don't know. I thought that was interesting from day on, and I think it reflects the mentality of this team as they approach training camp. I said this to someone today, and there's no way to say it without sort of a negative connotation, because that's how it's going to come across. But I said this to someone today that, like, it's almost kind of a boring training camp. And I don't, I think there are a few different things that I mean by that. I think I sort of said something along these lines last week when I was like, well, it's pretty much been what we expected it to be. The storylines are what we expect them to be. Everything is pretty much going, from everything we can gather, according to plan. There's a quarterback competition. You keep an eye on that with Kedon Slovis and Nick Patty, but I think everyone expects Kedon Slovis to be the starter. You have to fill those two outside linebacker spots, but we know who they are. We know the guys that are going to fill those spots, not just two players, but the four players in the rotation. You have an open job at cornerback, but you've got two guys coming back who played 400 plus snaps each on defense last season, so it's not like you're breaking in new players there. AJ Woods and MJ Devonshire played almost as much as Marquez Williams did a year ago. And so, your defense and your safeties, you know what those guys are. You know what your defensive line is. It's pretty much a known entity. Offense, you've got all these offensive linemen back. You've got Gavin Bartholomew back. You have all the running backs back. And you added another guy to that group. And the receiver, obviously you have to fill that hole left by Jordan Addison. But I almost feel like, unless something surprising goes wrong, we kind of know what they have and who they have to fill that spot and fill in those holes in the receiving corps in Konate Mumfield and Bub Means, in addition to Jared Wayne and Jalen Barden and Jaden Bradley. I wonder if I feel like it's a training camp without storylines, just because I've been writing about all this stuff for the past 8 months. Like we never took a break from writing about football, right? And we never took a break from talking about football right here on the show. So once a week, I'm sitting down for an hour and talking about nothing but Pitt football with you guys. The rest of the week, I'm writing about Pitt football all week. So maybe these and particularly over the summer, we did a lot of training camp preview content and hit on all these subjects. So they feel not stale, but we know them all. You know what I mean? We know what it is, and we know what this team is about. And the biggest storyline for this team is something that can't and won't be resolved for another 4 months. Because that storyline is, do they live up to expectations? Do they exceed expectations for the second year in a row? And to exceed expectations for the second year in a row, they have to do something that's never been done here before. They have to make the playoffs. That's the only way this team. I don't think that winning the ACC would be exceeding expectations. I know it'd be exceeding the expectations of the ACC media, but the next time we start caring about what the ACC media thinks will be the first time. Those aren't the expectations for this team are to win the Coastal. They are to win the ACC. Exceeding expectations. Now, if they just do that, it will be a very, very good season. It will be a very successful season. But to exceed expectations, they need to reach that next level, like they did a year ago. But because they reached the level they reached last year, you have to go even further to exceed expectations again this year. And that's the biggest storyline for this team. How do they follow up the most successful season in 40 years? Right? 2021 broke records. Literally broke records for offensive performance. 2021 was the best Pitt football season since the early 1980s. You're talking about a 40-year streak where this past season was better than any of them. But now that level has been reached, you need to reach the next level in order to exceed expectations again. And that's, like I say, that's the biggest storyline for this team is how far can they go? How do they follow up last year's success? What do they achieve? What are they really capable of achieving? I think they can be very, very good. I do. But they need to avoid, obviously they need to avoid those pratfalls and mistakes in those games that jump up and bite you. You look at the games that kept them out last year. You look at Western Michigan and Miami. You can't do that. You can't do that. You have to come out of September 4-0. You need that Miami game at the very end to have everything riding on it. Everything riding on it. Kind of like Miami had 5 years ago. That's what you need. I mean, you need to get to that point, which means you need to play, if not perfect football for 11 games, you need to play near perfect football for 11 games to get to that point, to give yourself a chance to really do it. And that's the biggest storyline with this team. And I think the team understands that too. That there is, and I said this in the spring, and Pat Narduzzi sort of dismissed the idea, said he didn't see anything different in his team's approach. He didn't, he thought they were going about it the same way they did a year earlier. I saw something different. There was something different in the way this team approached practice in the spring. And I think we see it again with the way they're approaching practice in camp. There's just a different vibe around this team. They've been to that level. They've achieved at that high level. They won the ACC. They went to Charlotte and they won the ACC championship game. They've been to a New Year's Six Bowl. They've been to that particular mountaintop. It's not the highest mountaintop, but they've been to that mountaintop. And they know what it takes to get there. They saw firsthand what it takes to get there. And there's enough leadership on this team and enough experienced players on this team to set the tone for the rest of the group. They know what it takes to get there. And I think they have a sense of what it takes to get beyond there. And I think you see it in their approach. I think it's more businesslike. And that's not to say that they're not having fun. I mean, to some extent, having fun in practice is a sign of a team that is confident. And I think this team is confident. I think they believe in themselves. Solomon DeShields was asked what he thought about being put number 16 in the coaches poll. And he said it was disrespect. They should be number 1. He really said that. John Morgan predicted on Twitter a while ago that Pitt was going to go undefeated and win the national championship. And he doubled down on it today, which I would expect him to do. Like, I'm not going to expect one of these guys to say, no, we should be around 16. That makes sense. I mean, they're kids, they're players, they're confident. They want to believe that they are the best. And so they're going to talk that way, and it's understandable. But I think that approach, I think the whole team has that mentality. Not that it's just going to be given to them, but that they are good enough to earn it. That they are good enough to compete at that level. And it's made that's the primary, like I say, storyline. For a team that doesn't seem to have glaring weaknesses, aside from some inexperience at outside linebacker, they don't really have glaring weaknesses, and they seemingly have a whole bunch of strengths. And this isn't, like I say, I mean, some of this is based on what we've seen out of training camp, and some of it is just based on me thinking a lot about this team this week. As I watch them in practice yesterday and today, just thinking about, like, what is, where are the weaknesses? What are the big storylines? It's almost kind of a boring camp in a good way, in a way that I think is fitting for the team. Now, there have been a lot of things that we've seen and noticed. I've written about it a lot on Panther-Lair.com, but I do want to get to comments and questions. Everybody's tuned in here, posting comments and questions and that kind of thing. Let me see here. We've got, you can always be a super chatter. You want to make sure that your comment gets read or your question gets answered. You can be a super chatter. You click that little $ down at the bottom, and you can throw a couple bucks to the podcast. You know what I mean? Support us. We really appreciate it. RJCman38's in there. He says, Mark Whipple not being on the staff guarantees 2 more wins. That's funny. I don't know. I don't remember Mark Whipple really having anything to do with the poor tackling in the first quarter against Miami or Kenny Pickett's interceptions against Miami. I don't remember having Mark Whipple having anything to do with the defense against Western Michigan. I'm not saying the offense was perfect in those games. I'm not saying that, they couldn't have done more, because they certainly could, but I'm not going to put that on Mark Whipple. He called the offense. He called the plays for the most productive offense in Pitt history. No offense in Pitt history has ever averaged more points per game. No offense in Pitt history has ever averaged more yards per game. It was the most productive offense in Pitt history. It produced a Biletnikoff Award winner and a Heisman Trophy finalist, not to mention an ACC championship, an 11-3 season. We can let it go with Whipple. All right. Should they have run the ball more? Sure, maybe. but they had a pretty damn good connection with Kenny Pickett and Jordan Addison. So I think what they did worked pretty well. Let's get to more comments and questions. Christian Cosmac says, Pitt has a real chance of being back to something great this year. If we avoid the injury bug and the slip-ups against overmatched competitors, this can be a nationally competitive program annually. And then he goes on to say 2 big-name nationally televised matchups in a packed stadium to start the season. 2-0 start, and the sky is the limit. Yeah, I mean, the opportunity's there. You know what I mean? When you bring back the personnel that they have, you bring back the players that they have from a team that was really successful at a high level and was, nationally ranked team, top 15 team, top 12 team, you do. It's all built in for you to do it. The schedule's not terribly daunting. You do have those 2 big games right off the bat. And whatever you want to say about West Virginia, who I don't think is going to be very good this year, and whatever you want to say about Tennessee, who I think might be pretty good this year, if whatever you want to say about those 2 teams, if you can come out of those first 2 games with wins over Power 5 non-conference opponents, boom, you are in the national conversation. So they open at number 16 in the coaches poll. It's pretty much what I said I thought would happen. That in the coaches poll, the AP poll, I thought they would be between 15 and 20 in the preseason poll. I'm expecting when the AP poll comes out in a week or so, they'll be in that 15 to 20 range. It's where they should be. But if you open up with wins over 2 Power 5 non-conference opponents, I don't think you're worse than 12. You know what I mean? If you start off at 18, maybe you only jump up to 13 or 14, but you're going to move up. You know what I mean? I think you move ahead of maybe some other teams that might have only beaten like an FCS and a MAC team or something like that. And certainly any one-loss teams, I think you move ahead of them, no matter who they lost to. Because you have 2 beautiful opportunities right there to set the tone right off the bat. Right off the bat. And you can't go blow it at Western Michigan. But if you get those 2, you damn well better finish the month of September 4-0. Because if you don't, we're going to have some ugly post-game shows. TRR says, any opinion on the Big Ten leaving ESPN and how it would pertain to the ACC and trying to fill those open slots starting in 2023? Feels like a potential positive for the ACC. This is a good question. I haven't read too much about that situation. I mean, I assume the ESPN's making a big play for the SEC. But you would think if they're not going to have the Big Ten, they're not going to just be able to fill all of their content slots with SEC games. So maybe that sweetens the pot for Pitt or for the ACC, but I'm not really sure how it works. You know what I mean? About how it kind of... I'm not sure how that benefit would go. Like I say, I haven't read enough about it. Brock Mondonic says, are you still doing the Friday interviews? We did that over the summer. I haven't gotten a chance to do any. I'd like to get those going again because I really enjoyed them. They were fun to do with a lot of the hoops guys, and there's a few more hoops guys we'd like to talk to, obviously. I think you know a few. You can probably guess a few that we would like to talk to this summer. But, once training camp started, we haven't really had an opportunity to do any of those. I'd like to get it going again, maybe near the end of camp and through the football season. We can get some hoops ones going, some football ones going, maybe some other entities in the Pitt athletics space, but we'll see. We'll see what happens. Let's see. All right, so there's a lot of questions about the Steel City NIL Club. Josh Newark here says, I understand the Steel City NIL Club. I just don't understand how this truly helps the program. Yes, it is pay for play, essentially. I saw Narduzzi kind of immediately act irritated and plug the Alliance 412 and then state that he supports the players getting paid. Josh, I'm going to try and find all the comments here about this thing because I want to talk about it for a little bit. Josh Newark says, isn't the true end game for players to get revenue sharing from TV deals, not average Pitt fans donating $25 a month? Byron Flex says, should Pitt donors contribute to Pitt Athletic Department or to an NIL collective? Royce Beacom says, where did he say it? That's a really good question, Byron. I'm wondering which way benefits the program and the student athlete, not just one or the other. John Leffler says Steel City NIL Club is a brilliant plan. The Pitt NIL network needs every dollar they can get to hang with the big money schools. Let's see if there's anything else. All right, I think that was it. So Steel City NIL Club. Let's talk about this for a little bit. I have an article coming out on Thursday morning about this very topic because I don't know if a lot of people understand it, and some people understand it and maybe don't, maybe don't know all the angles to it or whatever it is. So it launched Tuesday, I guess, was the official launch. Steel City NIL Club. And they have a website. I think it's steelcitynilclub.com. And what it is it's a paywall community. It's a paywall site. You pay to become a member of the site. And what you get when you pay to become a member of the site is you get access to exclusive videos from Pitt players, day in the life type of stuff, talking about their week, talking about the game, doing this, doing that. There are virtual Q&As you can take part in. There's a message board that the players may or may not participate in, I guess. Or I think they will. I'm not exactly sure on the details of that. But basically, you're paying to subscribe to a site. You're paying a membership fee to be part of the site. The money then goes to the players. There's an 18% fee by the company that has built and maintains the platform for this. Just to kind of make the site and build the nuts and bolts of it behind the scenes of how the players get the money. So that cut comes out. So 18%. I mean, you do the math on whatever that works out to. But the players, whoever signed up and is actively participating in it, get that money split evenly. And what they're trying to do is they're trying to have Pitt fans commit to a monthly amount, $10, $25, whatever it is. And, that money gets paid monthly. And at the end of the month, whatever Pitt players are participating get a cut. And I think they have 100. I don't know how many Pitt. I'm not going to even estimate on how many Pitt players they have. I don't think they have the whole team. But I think they have a decent number of them. And it's basically through an NIL deal. I mean, effectively, the players are selling access to themselves through a paywall website. And the difference between this and Alliance 412, the difference between those two entities, and I just want to look something up real quick as we talk here. I just want to make sure Alliance 412. It's silly, but I couldn't remember if it was 412 Alliance or Alliance 412. The difference between these two entities. Alliance 412, as far as I can tell, exists to connect companies, sponsors, endorsers with student athletes. Car company, trucking company, whatever company wants to get a sponsorship deal with a Pitt student athlete, either somebody they have in mind or they just want a Pitt student athlete to be the face of their company. They get in touch with Alliance 412. Alliance 412 then finds the player and matches them up and connects them. That's how that operates. The Steel City NIL Club is for individual fans to give the money basically directly to the players. I mean, they're not handing them the cash, but they're contributing money to the paywall to be a member of this paywall community, and then the money goes to the players. From everything I can see, it seems to be on the up and up. It's started by a former Notre Dame walk-on. He was one of the three founders of the company, and it seems like a legit thing. I don't know how much it's going to end up generating for the players. I think they've set a goal of a commitment of $20,000 a month. I think if you get that, I mean, you do the math. Say they have 100 players, $20,000 a month. That's like, what does that break down to? $200. But then you're taking out the 18%, so you're looking at $162, $164 a month, which is not very much money, but it's $164 more than they had before. Now that's at the optimal level. That's if they get the maximum, not the maximum commitments, but the top level of what they're shooting for, their target goal. You're talking about $160 some a month in each player's pocket, which again, 160 is more than zero. 164 is more than 163. It's $164 more than they had at the beginning of the month. And so that's cool. I do think there is a question, or there are questions of how you want to contribute your money. I think for Pitt, obviously the university is not involved in this. They don't have a hand in this. They can't have a hand in this. That's against the rules. All they can do is sign off on it from a compliance standpoint, which is kind of handled through the company. The company coordinates with the university, and they make sure everything's on the up and up and kosher. And then that's it. They're kind of hands off after that. The university, the athletic department, the fundraising arm, I mean, they're definitely, they want to do everything they can to support the student athletes. I think if you do the math on this, right, say they hit their target goal of $20,000 committed every month, I have to think Heather Like, Pat Bostic, the people who run the Pitt Athletic Department, the people who run the fundraising arm of the Pitt Athletic Department, $20,000 a month, it's $240,000 a year. I'm sure they would love to have your commitment to give $240,000 every year. I'm sure they'd like to have another $250,000 in the athletic department budget every year. Now, they can't come out and say, don't do that. They can't come out and say, don't give to the players. They can't come out and say, don't give to the student athletes. They really can't comment. I mean, there's not much for them to say about this at all. Pat Narduzzi said, yeah, I don't really know much about it. Whatever, anything that helps line our players' pockets, that's good with me. But, in a moment of truth, with some truth serum or what's the, whatever the truth serum is, I'm guessing athletic department officials would be like, you can give your money and it'll go straight to the players, or you can give it to the athletic department. It'll go straight to the football players, or you can give it to the athletic department, and we're going to spread it around and help elevate all the sports, and elevate this whole operation. And so, in that sense, it's a little weird. Probably it's a little awkward for Pitt to kind of almost be competing with the student athletes for your donation dollars, right? Everybody only has a finite amount of money. There's only so much money to be donated. There's only so much money to go around. And if you're giving it straight to the players, you're not giving it to the athletic department. Now, I'm not saying that the athletic department deserves it more than players. Players have been getting nothing for a really long time. The athletic department's been getting a lot for a really long time. Eventually, is it going? Are we eventually on a path where we're going to lead to just the players getting straight cash from the schools, that like making a salary? Maybe, possibly. But in the meantime, as we navigate this world of NIL, short of a salary, this something like this gives the fans an opportunity to directly support the players, to give money basically directly to the players. Now, they're not just handing a check or handing cash to the players. They're buying a membership, and the revenue from that membership goes to the players. So that's what it is. You know what I mean? And I'm not advocating one thing or another. I'm not saying you should do this or should do that. I mean, you do what you want with your money. I mean, that's perfectly, that's your prerogative. If you want to go to the athletic department, you want to go straight to the players. If you want to get a sponsorship deal with a player, an endorsement deal because you're a company or something, knock yourself out. You know what I mean? If you would like to sponsor me doing a show with one of the Pitt players all fall, like we did with the Kenny Pickett show last year, I am absolutely up for that. Feel free to reach out anytime. But this is just, it's another evolution. It's another step in the evolution of NIL. And there are these, Pitt has the Steel City NIL Club. They're all over the place. I think there's more than 20 of these so far. And who knows, by the time we finish this show, there might be even another 5 more added. They're all, Texas A&M, Nebraska, I think Ole Miss, Florida State. I think North Carolina is getting one. I think LSU, Iowa State, Iowa. They're all over the place. These paywall communities where you sign up to become a member and the revenue goes to the student athletes. It's another way NIL deals are sort of manifesting. I think we started out last June or July thinking everybody's going to get a car, and players will be just driving around in brand new cars all the time. And then to some extent that happened. But it's turned into a lot of different things, whether it's shows like the Kenny Pickett show that we did last year, or it's charity work like Kenny did, or Johnny Patrician did, or Cal Adamitis did, whether it's things that look a whole heck of a lot like pay to play or pay for play deals, you know what I mean? And now this, where you have an opportunity to sort of give money collectively to the team that gets sort of split up among those guys. So I think there will continue to be evolution in this space. I think there will continue to be new iterations and new variations of NIL deals, and this is just the latest one. And I think probably the last thing I'll say about this, I think probably one of the upsides for the players, one, it splits all the money up evenly. Everybody gets a cut. Everybody who participates gets a cut. And it's got a pretty low requirement for what the players need to do. They need to sign up. They need to sign a terms of service, basically. And then they need to do, a couple videos a month. They're participating in 1 or 2 chats a month or something like that. They just have to, take part in an activity to sort of make themselves an active participant, and then they get the money. So that's really what this company has done, is provide a platform for the student athletes, and it all kind of like operates from there. So I mean, I think I kind of appreciate that, but that's what it is, and we'll see where it goes next. All right, back to the questions and comments here. Vincent Calfo says, what personnel groupings do you think will be the most common on offense? 2 running back, 2 receiver, 1 tight end, 3 wide receiver, 1 running back, 1 tight end, 2 tight, 2 receiver, 1 running back. They're going to mix it up a lot. I think you'll see a lot of 3 receiver stuff with a back and a tight end. But I also think you'll see a lot of 2-back stuff with Daniel Carter in there as a fullback, or even Carter Johnson lining up as a fullback or an H-back type of positioning. And you'll see 2 tight and 2 receiver. I think you'll see a lot. What will be the most common formation? I don't know, because they're going to run it a lot. You know what I mean? So probably either 2-back or 2 tight end would be my guess. But I think you'll see a lot of 3 receiver sets, because Konate Mumfield, Bump Means, Jared Wayne, Jaden Bradley, Jalen Barton, these guys can play. And they're going to play. And they're going to play a lot. And they're going to be on the field a lot. And they're going to, they're going to get a lot of snaps. And it's not just going to be with 2 of them. Or it's not just going to be with 2 of them. You know what I mean? So, I don't know. I don't know what personnel grouping we'll see the most. But I think you'll see a lot of it. And I think they'll mix it up quite a bit. Josh Newark says, a boring training camp means the culture has been built. Expectations are Charlotte in December, and this team is loaded with talent. Now it's time to prove it. I expect a minimum of 9 wins. I mean, they should. I think this is a year where you can say that more than 8 is the expectation. That 9 is a minimum. And if you only win 9 games in the regular season, there's going to be some disappointing games in there. You know what I mean? Like, you could probably... It will dash all the hopes of playoffs or anything like that. But Tennessee and Miami, all right. You lose those games, you lost to probably the 2 best teams on your schedule. I don't think there's any doubt about that. Those are the 2 best teams on your schedule. If you only win 9 games, that means you lost to someone else. If you lose to somebody else on this schedule other than Tennessee and Miami, it's pretty disappointing. It's going to be disappointing. It'll be disappointing enough to lose to those 2 teams. But if you add a 3rd loss in there from this other group on the schedule, whether it's West Virginia, or it's one of the coastal teams, or it's Syracuse, or it's Louisville, this is going to be disappointing. So, I would say, I think 9 wins has to be the minimum, but 9 wins will be a disappointing total because of what that means as far as losses. Our friend Roman, one of our first visitors here to the show when we first started, it says, "Hey Chris, just wanted to stop by and say thanks for the great pods and coverage. Had a really rough day today, and it's great to relax and hear your voice." I tell you what, Roman, I appreciate you, man, because I think you were the first comment ever on the first live stream that we did. When we first started doing live streams, I don't even remember when that was. I have to look back through the YouTube channel. I feel like, and I guess we can prove this, but I feel like you were the first commenter on that first live stream. So shout out to you, Roman, for being around this long. We appreciate you, man. Josh Newark says, Miami's getting way too much hype as usual. Mediocre receivers. Their quarterback had a first half very average of a season. Then he did well. Not sold yet until they prove it. So Miami's always going to get that Miami respect, right? Miami's always going to get, first place votes in the Coastal. They're going to get first place votes in the ACC. They're going to get AP votes and coaches poll votes because they're Miami and everybody expects them to be good. The thing that concerns me this year is that their quarterback is really good. And you're right, Josh. It was really 6 games over the final, it was the final 6 games of the season, but he was really good in those 6 games. His stat line is, terrifying stuff if you're going to be an opponent. And I think that's going to be a game where Pitt's going to have to outscore them. Weather's not going to be a factor. The game's going to be down there. So you're going to have to outscore Miami to win, because I think their quarterback is legit, and he's going to he's going to put up numbers. And so that's what I think makes Miami different this year, potentially, is that they have a better quarterback than they've had any of these other years when they had all the hype. De'Aaron King or Brad Kaya or whoever else they were throwing out there. The guy they beat in 2017, I forget who the quarterback was in 17 when they beat him. I mean, those guys, they would hype them up annually. Van Dyke has actually done it, and that's concerning. Let's see here. Brock McDonagh says, really enjoyed your recruiting update on Sunday, especially on Hakeem Williams. It seems to me that there's a new favorite for Hakeem every day goes by. Hope you still feel confident in your prediction. So when let's see. As far as the recruiting update goes, so I posted a pretty long recruiting update on Panther-Lair.com on Sunday night in the wake of some news regarding Hakeem Williams, the 5-star wide receiver from Miami that Pitt's in on. He announced his, a top 6, and he's committing on September 23rd. So there's a lot kind of packed in there. Look, Pitt's been high on the list for Hakeem Williams basically since the spring. It started, I've recounted this a number of times. It started when Tyquan Underwood was hired at Pitt. And I don't think you can, I don't think it's possible to overstate the significance of Tyquan Underwood. Tyquan Underwood is tight enough with Hakeem Williams and has done such a good job of Hakeem Williams, a good enough job of recruiting Hakeem Williams, that he had Williams seriously considering Rutgers. If you can get a 5-star receiver interested in Rutgers, you are a really good recruiter. And that was what Underwood did. He had Hakeem Williams legitimately interested in Rutgers. And when Underwood was hired at Pitt, that interest carried over. It followed Underwood to Pitt, and it was strong enough that it got Williams up to Pitt for an unofficial visit in the spring. And once that happened, it was game on. Because that visit really impressed Williams. It impressed his family. It further cemented the bonds between Williams and Underwood. It helped, make the bond stronger between Williams and Charlie Partridge. It helped create and establish the bonds between Williams and Pat Narduzzi. And all that set the table for the official visit in July, in June, which seems like it was a home run. It seems like Williams was more than blown away by what he saw during his official visit. And the thing is, Pitt has been a significant player in Williams' recruitment longer than anyone nationally has wanted to give them credit for. They were right there at the top after the spring unofficial visit. They were top 2 at the end of June, top 2 with, I think, Georgia. The other school he took an official visit to. By the end of July, I think that it sort of switched around, or at least in the last week or so, I think it's become Pitt and Florida State. But the constant throughout has been Pitt. And right now, I think it's either Pitt or Florida State. And I think there's a really good chance, particularly if Pitt wins those first 2 games of the season, then on September 23rd, when Hakeem Williams makes his commitment, there's a really good chance that Pitt's going to get him. Now, as we've said all along, preaching to the choir here, because I know you've heard me say this, you get a commitment from Hakeem Williams on September 23rd, you got a long way to go till December 21st. I think that's when signing day is. You got a long way to go. You got 2 months, 3 months to hold on to that commitment. Good luck. Not that I don't think they're going to be able to, but you're going to be in for a battle, because Texas A&M's not going away. Florida State's not going away. Anybody else who's trying to get in on him, they're not going to give up, because Hakeem Williams really is that good. They're not going to give up on him. And so, good luck. You're going to be in for a battle. But it will be huge. And I think having those first 2 games of the season, you're going to have an opportunity to really impress him with what the offense looks like, with how the receivers are playing, and with the success that you can have. Royce Beacom says, I can't see it being training camp being boring, or maybe it is not at eye level. But there's a new offensive coordinator with a scheme leaning more on running and using the tight end, and a new quarterback. How's that tied together? Are they being too secretive? So, all right, I guess, right, I shouldn't say there are no storylines. We know what those storylines are. They have a new offensive coordinator. But the new offensive coordinator is not exactly a secret. He was here before. And granted, that was a long time ago, and he has changed and evolved and learned a lot since then. But I think we know what he's going to want to do. This isn't like Matt Canada's offense surprising everyone in the Penn State game, second week of the season in 2016. This is a guy who's going to want to establish the run, but not just be a 3-and-out ground and pound team. He's going to want to establish the run so that play action is a viable weapon for the quarterback to use, and he's going to attack with his weapons. Frank Cignetti may have evolved philosophically, and he may have added new things to his scheme and changed his offense and grown and developed his offense, which you would expect. The guy was last year 12 years ago. But the thing that would not change with Frank Cignetti was the thing he did best when he was here 12, 13 years ago. Got the ball to his playmakers. He emphasized his playmakers. You look at the usage numbers for Dion Lewis and Doran Dickerson and Jonathan Baldwin. Those guys were getting the ball early, often, and all season long. And it's why they were as good as they were. It's why they were able to produce at the level they produced. It's why Dion Lewis had an 1,800-yard season. It's why Doran Dickerson was an All-American. It's why Jonathan Baldwin scored like 8 touchdowns or something like that. He's got the ball to those guys a lot. And so we know what this is going to be. We might not know the minute details and the X's and O's, but we know you've got this veteran offensive line that's going to protect for the quarterback and open holes for the running game. You've got 3 really good running backs, one really, really good running back, one really good running back, and one good running back, and plus some more guys you brought in. And then you've got these receivers where I think there's talent all over the place. And a tight end who had a lot of success last year, a freshman All-American at tight end, and a freshman All-American at wide receiver. And you got a quarterback who was a Pac-12 Offensive Player of the Year 2 years ago, was Pac-12 Offensive Freshman of the Year 3 years ago. He's been held back by injuries last year. But if he's healthy, should be fine. And so, and I don't say that to say, well, the offense is going to be fine. Obviously, there's going to be a transition when you have a new quarterback, new coordinator, etc. But I think we know enough about Frank Cignetti. We know enough about what Frank Cignetti likes to do that we can see how this is going to go. I don't think we're going to be too surprised by what this offense at least attempts to do. They're going to feed the ball to Izzy Abanikanda. They're going to feed the ball to Konate Mumfield and Bub Means and Jared Wayne. They're going to feed the ball to Gavin Bartholomew. And they're going to run play action and really hit those guys deep after they establish the running game. So there is a new coordinator, but there's kind of not. There's a new quarterback, but we know who that quarterback is, and we know he's got, he's thrown almost 60 touchdown passes in his career. He's not a brand new guy that we don't know anything about. I guess I shouldn't, maybe boring is not the right word. It's not, I don't mean to say that. But I think, maybe, like I say, maybe part of it is just that I've been writing about this stuff a lot for the past 4 months. And so I, run, I don't get bored with it, but it's kind of like, well, maybe I'm just anxious to start the season. Because, this year, as much as any, I'm really interested to see what this team does. I know what I think they can do, but I want to actually see what actually happens. Let's see. Christian Kosmak says, everyone brings up all the points scored last season. That's obviously important, but the negative view of the passing game is that it gassed the defense at times when a run game would have helped a tired secondary. Yeah, to some extent. And they were able to run the ball late in games. Dave Borbley made this point to me last week on Media Day. I was talking to him, Pitt offensive line coach. And he said, basically, I mean, paraphrasing what he said, but basically it was like, I think one of the changes in emphasis this year will be trying to run the ball more early in games. That they ran the ball last year, but they tended to throw it early to get up, on top of teams and get the lead, and then they ran it to run out the clock and end it. You know what I mean? Kill the game, win the game. And they were obviously, they had the huge 11-minute drive or something at Virginia Tech. I mean, they had ridiculous time of possession in the second half and the fourth quarter in some of those games. Virginia Tech, I think Georgia Tech, I think Clemson, they had a time of possession advantage. And so that'll be a bit of a change to do that earlier in games, but they were able to run the ball and close games out. It just wasn't Whipple's preference. He wanted to throw and he wanted to put the ball in Kenny Pickett's hands. TRR says, glad to hear you're a fan of the alleged wide receiver verbal. Sounds like the kid has some speed. Forget which one I think I know who you're talking about. But I will say this about Pitt commitments. Lamar Seymour is a wide receiver commit that we should probably be talking about more than we already are. You know what I mean? Like I know he had been committed to Miami for like 2 years, and I think at that point, he had committed as a freshman. And I think, by the time you come around to him flipping to Pitt, I think it was pretty much understood that he wasn't going to Miami anymore. But, he's a legit playmaker. You watch some of his film, he makes a lot happen. He's electric with the ball in his hands. And I think we talk a lot about, everybody's watching for Hakeem Williams. I think we talked a lot about Kenny Johnson because everybody thought Penn State was going to get him. Zion Fowler was the first commitment in the class. Lamar Seymour, he committed and then didn't announce it for a couple weeks or whatever it was. And so I think he kind of has slid under the radar, but I don't think he should because I think he's one of the better commitments in this class. Let me see here. Scroll down. Talking a lot about NIL stuff here. We covered that quite a bit. Let me see what else we have. I thought there was something else. Josh Newark says Bruce Feldman's Freaks article has Kalijah Kancey as the number 9 freak athlete. Is Kancey an absolute lock for round 1 in the NFL draft? No, I wouldn't say that. I wouldn't say he's an absolute lock for round 1. There are going to be Aaron Donald comparisons because of the production, because he's an undersized defensive tackle, but Kancey's smaller than Aaron Donald. Aaron Donald was considered a really small defensive tackle. Kancey is smaller than him. I think Kalijah Kancey is going to have a monster year this year in terms of production, and then I think he's going to have to go to the NFL Draft Combine and really put up some serious numbers. Like 40 vertical, the bench. He's going to have to blow them away. And I still think he might be too small to be a first-round pick. That doesn't mean that I don't think he can be productive in the NFL. That doesn't mean I don't think he can play in the NFL. That doesn't mean I don't think he can be a really good, long veteran career in the NFL. I just think his height, his size is going to hold him back from being a first-round pick. It almost held Aaron Donald back, but he tested so well that they couldn't avoid it. I think Kancey's going to have to test really well to get himself probably in the second round conversation. That's my guess, but it's a long time from now. We'll see. Will Z says, Chris, I think you should bring back your beer of the week for podcasts once football season starts. I'd love to bring back the beer of the week, but since I'm gluten-free, there's only 4 beers out there that I can drink. We need to find more gluten-free beers. I need gluten-free breweries to sponsor the podcast. That would be awesome. So, Will Z, if you want to find those gluten-free breweries and broker a deal, that would be a big help. Josh Newark says Pitt is going against some really good quarterbacks this year. Tennessee, Louisville, Virginia, and Miami. Tennessee, yes. Miami, yes. Louisville, I'm a pretty big fan of Malik Cunningham. I'm not sure if he's the type of quarterback who beats Pitt's defense sort of regularly with, under Pat Narduzzi, the way Narduzzi's defenses have been played. I don't think they've gotten beat by quarterbacks like Cunningham all that much. And then Virginia, Brennan Armstrong is really good. He's got some of his receivers back, but I think they lost a bunch on the offensive line. I think there were some real questions about how good that offense will be this year as opposed to last year with some of the losses they had in the offseason. So I'm not so sure about Virginia, but we'll see. Scroll down. Brock McDonough says, are you expecting the Tennessee game to be the big recruiting weekend as was the Clemson game last year, since Hakeem Williams will be up for the Tennessee game? Yeah, Hakeem said he's coming up for the Tennessee game. That's a big, obviously a big visit. Yeah, and absolutely. I think they'll try and get as many kids here as possible. If they beat West Virginia, I mean, that game is going to have huge attendance anyway, the Tennessee game. If they beat West Virginia, it's going to be, I think it'll be through the roof. I think that the crowds will be very, very significant. And I think Tennessee's going to travel well, and I think Pitt fans are going to show up for it. So you absolutely bring kids to that game. The West Virginia game is obviously going to be a little bit tougher for out-of-town kids to come into unless they haven't started school yet, since it's a Thursday night. Some locals could be there. That's gonna be a tough one to get visitors at. But the Tennessee game will be a huge one. I don't think there's any question about it. Is it going to be like the Clemson game last year? I don't know, but it's going to be a huge game for visitors. I think they'll definitely bring. I think they'll bring a lot of guys. I really do. Let's see here. The Panther Room says, I've been wondering if there will be a sellout crowd for the Tennessee game with the West Virginia game close and the ticket price so high, with the West Virginia game being so close together. So, I don't know. Let's look and see if you can you buy a ticket for Tennessee right now? I haven't. They're sold out of season tickets. Not going to really bother around on that site trying to figure out if there are single game tickets available to Tennessee. I never know how that thing works. But look, as a 3:30 game on a Saturday, particularly if they beat West Virginia, I don't see any reason that game shouldn't be a sellout. I think you'll have a huge, crowd there. I think you'll have a huge crowd there even if you lose to West Virginia, because I think Tennessee will travel well, and I think you're still going to be ranked in the top 25, and I think it'll be a big, unless you look really bad against West Virginia, and so I think it'll be a big crowd. It's an appealing and it's an attractive game, But if you beat West Virginia, that place should be packed. What did it say on that old poster from Pitt Stadium? Thrilled to capacity, I think it said. That's what it should be at Acrisure Stadium for the Tennessee game. It should be thrilled to capacity, because that should be an awesome environment. It really should. And then if you win that, you go out and beat Western Michigan. They might even get a decent crowd for Rhode Island. And then you jump into the ACC play and you look at potentially setting records for attendance. With the games. You don't have any more marquee opponents at home after those first two. But if you take care of business against those first two, then Pitt, should be enough of a draw to get big crowds in for the rest of the season. I would think. But we'll see. Like I said, I just kind of want the season to get here. You know what I mean? Like, I know what this team is. I know who this team is. I know what's happening with this team. At least I think I do. I need to see them go out and do it on the field. We know who all these players are. We're not relying on, you're not relying on a bunch of unknowns. They just have to go out and play and see what they can do. It should be fun. All right, listen, make sure you're staying tuned to Panther-Lair.com. The website, Panther-Lair.com, Pittsburgh.rivals.com. We'll have all the coverage there. Like I say, we have an article coming on Thursday morning about the Steel City NIL Club. I think you'll find that interesting, kind of getting into the nuts and bolts of how that works and how it benefits the Pitt student athletes and just kind of what the whole setup is there. And, of course, we'll have lots of coverage from training camp. They have 2 more practices that are, I'm going to say, open to the media. The first 30 minutes are open to the media, Thursday and Friday. We'll have coverage from those, photos, videos, articles, all those kinds of things at on Panther-Lair.com. And, of course, message boards where we'll be talking about everything going on in the world of Pitt sports. We'll be talking about training camp. We'll talk about the season. We'll be talking about recruiting, everything. Panther-Lair.com. Make sure you like this video. Subscribe to our YouTube channel, youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com. That's huge for us. That's the biggest thing you can do. I appreciate it very, very much. Thanks to everybody who joined the live stream tonight. It was a lot of fun having a conversation as always. Appreciate everybody who jumped in with the comments and the questions, the super chatters, and everybody who looks at it later, watches the video later in the week. We appreciate you too. Make sure you like the video, subscribe to youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com. We'll be back on Monday morning with another weekend recap, bring you up to speed on everything you need to know to start the new week. And until then, have a great rest of the week. Have a great weekend. We'll talk to you again on Monday.